Parties today and their functions. In the United States, two major political parties, the Democratic and Republican parties, dominate the political landscape. Generally speaking, a political party is an organization of ideologically similar people that nominates and elects its members to office in order to run the government and shape public policy. If you didn't get that, pause, rewind, play it again. Parties identify potential candidates. Second, nominate them to run for office. Third, campaign for them. Four, organize elections. And five, govern. But given some overlapping roles, political scientists agree that parties can be distinguished from other political organizations, such as interest groups and political action committees, through four defining characteristics. First, political parties run candidates under their own label or affiliation. Most candidates who run for office are identified by their political party affiliation. Running a candidate under the party label requires party functions such as recruiting candidates, organizing elections, and campaigning. And political parties typically are the only organization that regularly run candidates for political office under the party label on a ballot. Make sure you make that distinction in your notes. Second, unlike interest groups, which hope to have individuals sympathetic to their cause elected but typically do not want to govern, political parties seek to govern. Once again, make sure you make that distinction between interest groups and political parties. Political parties run candidates hoping that they will win a majority of the seats in a legislature or control the executive branch. Such victories enable the party to enact a broad partisan agenda. Partisan means one party. For example, the Democratic victories in the 2008 presidential and congressional elections paved the way for President Obama and the Democratic leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate to act on the party's stated agenda, particularly in reforming the nation's healthcare system. But the Democrats' ability to govern unilaterally, which means by themselves, was stymied when the 2010 elections resulted in Republicans taking over leadership of the U.S. House of Representatives because of their new majority. A third defining characteristic is that political parties have broad concerns focused on many issues. The major parties in the United States are made up of coalitions, or of different groups, and constituencies who rely on political parties to enact their agenda. That is to say, if we were to look at a party's platform, which is the formal statement of its principles and policy objectives, and each principle and policy is known as a plank. So if I talk to you about the planks in a platform, you'll know what I'm talking about. We would find its stance on all sorts of issues: war, abortion rights, environmental protection, and the minimum wage. All of those would have been planks in a platform. These positions are one articulation of the interests of that party's coalition's constituencies. Typically, interest groups have narrower issue concerns than parties do, and some focus only on a single issue. Once again, make sure you make that distinction. For example, we know that the National Rifle Association opposes governmental controls on gun ownership. But what is this interest group's position on the minimum wage, on the environment? Chances are high that the NRA does not have positions on those matters because its concern is with the single issue of gun ownership. Finally, political parties are quasi-public organizations that have a special relationship with the government. Some functions of political parties overlap with governmental functions, and some party functions facilitate the creation and perpetuation of government, running elections, for example. The resulting special status subjects political parties to greater scrutiny than private clubs and organizations. Political scientists who study the nature of America's civic engagement recognize that political parties represent one of the main channels through which citizens can make their voices heard. A fixture in the politics of American communities, large and small, parties today are accessible to virtually everyone. Historically, political parties excluded various groups from participating. For example, in many states, women were shut out of party meetings until the mid-20th century. African Americans were formally excluded from voting in Democratic primaries in the South until the U.S. Supreme Court banned the practice in 1944. Though it took decades before the party complied with that decision. But in recent times, political parties have increasingly embraced and championed diversity. They have encouraged various groups beyond the traditional white European American male party establishment to get involved formally in the party organization, to participate in campaign activities, and to vote. As a result, parties today are much more inclusive of women, ethnic and racial minorities, students, providing an important avenue for those traditionally excluded from political life to gain valuable experience as party activists, campaign volunteers, and informed voters. This increasingly diverse participation has also contributed to the party's health because it has caused them to recognize that to be successful, candidates must reflect the diverse identities and interests of voters. This is a court case, Smith versus Allwright, 1944, and this is what I referred to earlier that ended the practice of white primaries once and for all. However, this was in theory, not in practice, because it did take a while for that to actually be manifested. All right, so what political parties do? As we have seen, by promoting political activity, political parties encourage civic engagement and civic participation, and in that way foster democracy. Parties provide a structure for people at the grassroots level to volunteer on party-run campaigns, make campaign contributions, work in day-to-day operations of the party, and run for office. Grassroots organizing can be defined as tasks that involve direct contact with voters or potential voters. During the 2012 elections, Democratic and Republican activists registered, canvassed, and mobilized voters. Both parties focused their efforts on competitive districts, districts where either party had a chance at winning. That year, many of the congressional seats targeted by the political parties were seats that had been changed by the reapportionment and redistricting process, which had reconfigured House seats in order to reflect changes in population. Reapportionment just means that the population is shifting where it lives. Redistricting means we're making new districts because of that shift in population. You might want to make that distinction in your notes. In 2012, this meant that both political parties' energies were focused on new open House seats where no incumbent was standing for re-election, or on House seats whose districts had changed to such an extent that the incumbent was left vulnerable by the process, leaving room for the opposing party to make headway. We had two of those such situations in the state of New York. On the local level, a political party's ability to promote citizen participation varies with its relative influence within the community. Viable political parties, those that effectively contest and win some elections, are more effective at promoting citizen participation than weak political parties. A party that typically is in the minority in a local government, on the town council, in the county legislature, will find it more difficult to attract volunteers to bring people out to fundraisers and to recruit candidates. And it naturally follows that parties that are better at attracting public participation are more likely to win elections. Political parties also foster cooperation between divided interests and factions, building coalition even in the most divisive of times. For example, in March 2012, during a heated presidential race and in the midst of a Supreme Court case that would determine the constitutionality of President Obama's health care reform, the Congress still managed to act in a bipartisan fashion. In a bipartisan vote, which means both parties, both houses granted a 90-day extension of a highway authorization, enabling states to continue receiving their highway funds. Civic engagement researchers point out that political parties work in building coalitions and promoting cooperation among diverse groups often occurs away from the bright lights of the media-saturated public arena, where the parties' differences, rather than their common causes, often are in the spotlight. Political parties also grease the wheels of government and ensure its smooth running. Nearly all legislatures, from town councils to Congress, consist of a majority party, the party to which more than 50% of the elected legislators belong, and the minority party to which less than 50% of the elected legislators belong. Make sure you distinct with that in your notes. Thus, if 5 of the 9 members of your town council are Republicans and 4 are Democrats, the Republicans are the majority party and the Democrats are the minority party. Think to yourself, who's got the majority in the House and who's got the majority in the Senate? The majority party elects the legislature's leaders, making committee assignments, and holds a majority on those committees. By serving as a training ground for members, political parties also foster effective government. This role of parties is particularly important for groups that traditionally have not been among the power brokers in government. Historically, African Americans, Latinos, and women have gained valuable knowledge and leadership experience in party organizations by volunteering on party-run campaigns, assisting with candidate recruitment, or helping with fundraising endeavors before running for office. Party credentials established by serving the party in these ways can act as a leveling device that can help make a newcomer's candidacy more viable. Perhaps most important, political parties promote civic responsibility among elected officials and give voters an important check on those elected officials. There is no doubt that the 2014 congressional elections will be a mandate on President Obama's second term, even though the president's name is not on the ballot. When an elected leader, particularly a chief executive, is the crucial player in enacting an important policy, the existence of political parties enables voters to hold party members responsible even if that particular elected official is not running for re-election. The system thus provides a check on the power of elected officials because it makes them more aware that the policy or position they are making may be unpopular. Historically, according to one theory, political parties have also made government more effective and have provided important cues for voters. The responsible party model, developed by E. Schattentreider, posits that a party tries to give voters a clear choice by establishing priorities or policy stances different from those of the rival party or parties. Because a party's elected officials tend to be loyal to their party's stances, voters can readily anticipate how a candidate will vote on a given set of issues if elected and can thus cast their vote according to the preferences on those issues.